Chucky definitely lives for the girlies. Chucky was giving scenes, he was giving looks, Chucky was giving everything he was supposed to give. So I'm back with another video, and before I start the season 1 review of Chucky, the television series, I do want to get into a couple things, and mainly just one thing. About comments, I want to encourage people who are going to comment to keep it respectful. So I encourage you, if you can't disagree with someone and keep it respectful, don't comment it at all, because I will simply just block you.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Another thing I also want to get into is I do want to encourage people that are watching this video to, of course, like, comment, and subscribe. And so that's basically it for the intro. Let's get straight into the video. So a lot happened this season initially. So we get introduced to Jake. And Jake, of course, is our protagonist. And so we see Jake at a garage sale, and he has acquired a good guy doll, in which we know as the audience is Chucky. And he ends up taking this Chucky doll home, in which we find, as the audience enters his room, that Jake is initially this artsy kid. He's initially using the Chucky doll to contribute to a doll sculpture that he has in his room. And he initially doesn't use the Chucky doll for the doll sculpture. Once Jake finds out that he's not going to be able to afford art camp, he looks on the internet and finds out that this doll he has, who is Chucky, is worth a bunch of money. So he decides that he's going to keep the doll and sell it. And so we see Jake initially transition to school, in which he gets on the bus, and we find out right off the bat that Jake is gay. And we kind of have a little hint of that in the previous scene, as his dad kind of hits to him wanting Jake to ask a girl out. But I kind of thought that was just a testament to how old the writing room was.
The girls that get it, and the girls that don't.
To think that was acceptable to put in the TV show, but we know for sure why all that gay rhetoric was being said was because Jake is gay, as we see him get on the bus, and we kind of see this slow romantic tease that often TV shows and movies like to do when our protagonist really likes a person. And we see this done to Deven, who
where the hood niggas at? Where's the hood niggas at?
Is a black queer person who I just very much love and live for. Ends up not talking to Deven as he sits down with his Chucky doll, as right before it seems like he's about to get a word out to Deven, his cousin, who is Junior, which he doesn't like, ends up dapping Deven up. We initially see Jake transition to school, in which we are quickly aware that Jake is not the cool kid in school. We have this kid that walks up to him that I thought initially was maybe a potential friend or a potential character, but no, this is just a random person who decides to ask Junior, could he introduce him to his cousin? Well, his cousin, who is kind of like space-wise very close to Jake at the time of this interaction, then is able to turn the boy down. And after the boy walks away, we get introduced to Lexy, who starts off as our antagonist in the show, as we are very much able to be aware that Lexy does not like Jake at all. And Lexy kind of comes off as nice initially, but we see in later scenes, when we transition into the class scene, we see Lexy post a GoFundMe in the class to kind of tease Jake about being poor. And so, of course, Lexy gets a detention for that. And within her getting detention, we see the first interaction with the Chucky doll, as the Chucky doll is left with the teacher because Jake's asked the teacher to hold the Chucky doll, because I'm guessing Jake just couldn't take it. And I thought initially Lexy was going to be Chucky's first kill, but that ends up not happening, as right before Chucky really goes in for the go, he ends up being interrupted by the teacher and the principal walking in, and nonetheless Lexy gets away. By the end of the first episode, we see initially our first killing. And in terms of, we will see Jake dad's die, as we learn about that he is not only abusive to Jake, but he is also a homophobe. And of course, because this is a queer accepting space, Chucky was just not having that. Jake unfortunately has to witness his dad being electrocuted, as well as Chucky standing there as a testament that Chucky is not only alive, but Chucky is the reason why his dad died. And so we transition to the next episode, where Jake is now an orphan, so he initially has to go live with his uncle, which includes his wife and of course Junior, Junior, his cousin that Jake doesn't like, and good reason, because Junior is just a dick, especially the first 4 episodes. And so we see Jake and Chucky, because Chucky isn't going anywhere, of course, because he's our main character here, girl. Of course, transition to Junior's house. We initially see Jake and Chucky band together to kind of get rid of, as Chucky calls, his Lexy problem, as Chucky decides that he just doesn't like Lexy. And Jake is kind of intrigued by the situation, but he's not initially there, right? And so he would end up getting there, as Jake is eventually, in the second episode, he's invited to a party. Chucky in this process kind of escapes to kill Lexy on his own, and that's what kind of catapults Jake to kind of actually go to the party, because he's trying to get Chucky, and Chucky wants to kill Lexy initially. So Chucky nonetheless finds Lexy, but he ends up killing her, as her and Junior are kind of in the bed, and Chucky is like stabbing up there, but he's constantly missing at these very weird and awkward times. And so what we can take away from this specific scene is that Chucky ends up failing, but what he does end up succeeding in is that he does make a friend with Lexy's little sister, which will come into play in later episodes. And this wouldn't be any fault of Chucky, but it would be beneficial to Chucky and kind of catapulting Jake to go along with his plan of killing Chucky. And in terms of that, Jake, after escaping from his 7 minutes of hell with Deven, he is immediately put into a situation where he is witnessing Lexy nonetheless make fun of his dad's death, in which she's imitating a man who is getting electrocuted, in which
because when you do clown shit, I gotta treat you and talk to you like you a clown.
you can immediately infer it's his dad, because everyone knows that his dad has just died. So this alone would be the pull that Jake needs to kind of be convinced to kill Lexy. And once that is going, Chucky and Jake not necessarily develops a plan, but we kind of see them a couple scenes later, right, develop a plan to kind of jump out of the bushes while Lexy is on her running trail and just kill her there. But once he actually goes through with that plan, he ends up finding that it's not Lexy, it's Junior, in which he quickly has to hide the knife that he had to kill Lexy with behind his back. And so I guess we can say, lucky for Jake, an opportunity will present itself, as I said later on. Junior presents the opportunity for Lexy to apologize to Jake. And Lexy, of course being Lexy, thinks, well, yeah, I can apologize to him, and within that apology, hopefully he'll be sympathetic of me enough to give me the Chucky doll. And Lexy goes to do that. And when she is initially shot down, Jake ends up being further convinced by Chucky to kind of go with the plan and say, like, you know, this is your perfect opportunity, you need to just do this. Jake basically dropped the Chucky doll off at her house.
Extremely disappointed in you. This is a joke to you. You've been through anger management. You've been through your grandmother getting her lights turned off to buy you a swimsuit for this competition. And you go over there and you joke and you laugh?
Later that night, of course, Lexy parents are kind of out the house because her mom is a mayor and they have some banquet to go to. And she initially leaves Lexy in charge of her little sister. And because Lexy's little sister is very happy that her sister was able to get her Chucky doll, she allows Lexy to throw a party. Run it up! Without telling her parents. Eventually, Chucky would end up making his move on Lexy once he's able to kind of escape Lexy's little sister to kind of go kill Lexy. And within this altercation, they kind of burned down the whole house. And
what? Child. Anyway, so
no one is able to hear one of the boys that came to the party that died when he was screaming for help. And no one was able to hear the fire that was occurring, nor were they able to hear Lexy screaming for help as Chucky was trying to kill her because they all had headphones. And so as we go on, we initially see that thankfully, right, everybody got out of the fire outside of the boy that died. And so initially, Lexy escapes.
Nasty but classy. Birkin bad me.
And she's unharmed, but the rest of the people, such as her sister and the people that attended the party, were hospitalized because they weren't in a fire. As we initially see Jake go to the hospital to kind of be awakened to the situation that he initially started. While he's in the hospital, him and Lexy are kind of bonded together and initially create the beginning of what would become the Scooby Gang.
Are y'all ready?
As Lexy and Jake are kind of able to initiate each other off the terms of them both realizing that Chucky is alive and dangerous, and that's not okay, so they initially have to stop Chucky.
Although I could have been doing more, I was just hurt and traumatized.
And eventually they convince Jake's love interest to kind of join the Scooby Gang as well.
To be in love with you. Hey, say do.
And we see Deven as Lexy is able to convince Deven that Chucky is a living doll and wants nothing more to just kill everybody. And of course, Deven is willing to go with it because he's already been doing further research on characters who have been in previous movies who will come in later in the season, in which Deven is able to realize that, okay, like, this good guy doll is nothing good and he definitely has a history. And this was just the perfect opportunity.
Soldier. She make it clap, clap, clap. She make it clap, clap, clap. She make it.
We find out that Chucky ended up surviving the
I'm a bad bitch. I'm a bad bitch. I'm a bad bitch.
Who are you? Fire. Lexi's dad ends up trying to give the dog back to Lexi's little sister, but because Lexi's little sister is so terrified of the dog, they end up throwing the doll away. Unfortunately, Lexy and the gang end up finding that out too late because, of course, they're trying to kill Chucky, but before they can actually do that, he's gone somewhere else. We kind of see this hunt for Chucky ensue as the scenes go on. Eventually, they end up finding the old Chucky doll. Initially, we think it's over and Chucky is dead.
Girl, shut the fuck up. You thought you ate that?
But what we actually end up finding out is that Chucky, within his time of being away from them, in the period that they were trying to find them, was actually able to transition into another doll.
When they see this little thing here, back up and kicking, they be like, yo, what the fuck is it gonna take to get rid of this bitch? You can't get rid of me, bitch!
Which is the newer doll that her dad ended up gifting Lexi's little sister, as we see in future scenes. Now, this is where things get very interesting for the season.
Yo, y'all are messy.
In the terms of that, we end up getting Kyle and Andy, who are previous people within the Chuckyverse. We also get Tiffany, who is Chucky's wife, and we also get Nika, I believe, who was in one of the Chucky movies. We also get them introduced into the TV show, in which they have their own individual plot. We have Nika, she's a separated soul of Chucky, in which they are kind of interacting with Tiffany. And then we have Andy and Kyle, who are ultimately introduced to this story because they are Chucky doll hunters now.
First of all, y'all know I'm extra. If y'all don't get this by now, get with it. Like,
where they basically go around and they're hunting all the dolls of Chucky in order to bring an ending to Chucky's terror. And what we have initially is Chucky going wild, in the term of Chucky ends up killing Junior's mom.
I'm a bad bitch. I'm a cunt. I'm starting to feel like a dungeon, rah, rah, like a dungeon dragon, rah, rah, like a dungeon dragon, like a dungeon dragon, like a
He ends up killing Deven mom, and pretty much in the same episode. After that, the gang kind of decides to disband because, you know, people have died and big people have died, you know, like Junior's mom is dead, Deven's mom is dead, and people are getting hurt now. And just further just decide, I guess, to kind of just let Chucky do their thing.
Hi, I'm Kyla Pratt, Penny from the Proud Family, and you're watching Disney Channel.
And that if they just run away, that'll somehow solve the problem of Chucky. Deven and Jake initially decide to break off.
What the fuck are you doing?
As Jake is kind of running away, and so is Deven running away, and Lexy is kind of just, I guess, left to her own accord. But in the process of Jake running away, he ends up coming across a delivery man who is delivering a Chucky doll. In seeing that Chucky doll, he is reminiscent of everything that not only Chucky has done, but reminiscent of Chucky is still very much out there and very much has a plan to kind of take over the world. And so he goes back to, of course, his hometown, and he meets up with Lexy, and him and Lexy kind of have this heart-to-heart moment about how, you know, she considers him and Deven family. And within this process of them having a gushy moment, right, they decide to, of course, band together again to fight Chucky.
Hey! What is the tea? The girls are fighting! No!
But Lexy says that, well, if they're gonna have a plan, they can't do anything with Deven because Deven is basically the brain of the operations. Like, within trying to find Deven, they notice that Deven is where initially Chucky's old house is.
It's too much. It's just too much. It's too much.
And that in itself sends red flags to Lexy as well as Jake that Deven is definitely in some type of trouble. because, of course, we as the audience know that Tiffany as well as Nico, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, are also held up at their house, and they actually brought their house in previous scenes, and Nico was kind of trapped there, and we also know as the audience that Deven is definitely in trouble. We kind of break off from Lexy and Jake in the terms of we are now met with Junior and Chucky, and which now Junior is kind of left with the weight of his mom dying. In the terms of, and now he is left with his abusive dad, who is not necessarily cheating, but Junior's believe he's cheating because Tiffany, who is Chucky's wife, showed up at the funeral of Junior's mom.
It don't motherfucking matter. Bitch, I'm me. I'm me and you. Blame God.
And initially kissed her dad. And Tiffany admits to Junior in previous scenes that her and his dad had an affair. And so Junior is livid about that. Chucky is trying to convince Junior to initially kill his dad. Eventually, Jake and Chucky, they go along with this plan and they definitely kill his dad. And within Junior killing his dad, he initiates a ritual within Chucky in the terms that now Chucky has enough power in order to kind of expand his consciousness to other Chucky dolls, which is why those Chucky dolls were being delivered to the house, because Chucky is trying to build an army of Chucky dolls. And so now, right, not only do we have that plan now enacted, but we also have Junior joining the bad side.
Attention! This is how bad bitches leave London and go to Prague. You put the kitty to spell Prague.
In this series with Jake and Lexy initially being knocked out by Kyle, and she goes on to save Deven.
Sage all you bitches out. Sage all you.
As Jake and Lexy tell Kyle what is going on and that Kyle needs to help them to go save Deven. And so Kyle goes on to do that. We go back to Junior and Chucky, who are now kind of interacting with Tiffany and Nico, and with Tiffany, who has fallen in love with Nico because she believes that her and Nico have a much more healthier connection. And
I would never eat a plate that look like that.
But they put this on my plate.
I don't do what they do. I do what I do. I would never eat a plate that look like that.
Much more beneficial connection for her than her and Chucky have. And so Chucky initially asked Tiffany to kill Nico because Nico is no longer needed because he has so many Chuckies now. He doesn't need that one. Within that process, Tiffany just decides not to do it, and then he turns to Junior, and right before Junior decides to do it, Tiffany just ends up turning on Chucky.
But when I have an ego, I'm a bitch. So I'll be that. You walk around the game with the biggest ego, you can't tell shit. But when I stand up for myself,
We finally see the end of Chucky, Tiffany's relationship, and her and Nico kind of run away. Within that process, Andy, who comes to save Deven, this is when Deven tells Andy initially that the door is booby-trapped. Of course, unfortunately for Kyle, who is also on her way to save Deven, she doesn't initially know that, and she hears Chucky kind of mimic this baby voice in which she initially walks right into the booby trap and the door explodes.
Fuck out of here teaching these people any motherfucking thing. They kiss my ass.
So we go back to the scene of Jake, and initially Lexy waking up from kind of their days. They see basically their phones light up with notifications that have said that basically the house that Deven was at and that they know Deven was at was blown up. But thankfully Deven walks through the front door.
Let me...
And so this initiation that we don't know if Kyle led, but we know that him and Andy was able to get out. Initially, to end this season off, we have this big finale.
I'm hungry. People don't understand, I have to eat.
Initially, we see Chucky and his dogs kind of be pushed into the mainstream in the term that his dogs were able to escape before they were blown up and are now kind of being pushed to be sent all over America. And so we finally have this final battle scene in which the Chucky dolls and Andy kind of go on their own hunt as Andy is able to take over the person who was driving the Chucky dolls to the airport. And so initially, right, we see Andy die, and we kind of see the Chucky dolls die as well as they have their whole fighting scene. And then we switch back to Jake as well as Junior as well as Lexy and Deven and their whole final battle scene in which Chucky is like stabbing people up their booty holes, girl. And
Barbs, I love you, Barbs. BET, thank you. YMC and B, step your dick up.
And we end this season with initially everybody that has died. Junior also dies within the fight between Chucky, along with Lexy's dad, and of course all the other people we left this season. And we end with, of course, Tiffany and Nico still being alive, Junior, Deven, as well as Lexy, of course, still being alive. And of course, we know Chucky in some shape or form is still alive because his soul also exists in Nico, and Nico is still alive. And so yeah, that's basically what happened this season. Overall, my thoughts on the season is that this was a fantastic season. Now, some people may watch this and be like, wow, like this is kind of moving very fast, or it's kind of doing a lot of things that we necessarily would see in the season finale that we're seeing in like the first episode. And I completely agree. But I feel like what I also encourage you to consider is that Chucky, the television series, is being put out on television.
Now, let's talk about that.
It's not on streaming services, that it's people are having to go to actual television in order to watch this. And considering that, that is ultimately the reason why we have these very like big, truly and utterly season finale moments in like the first episode or like the third episode, because they have to keep people actually going back to their television every week. Personally, that is not a problem I have with this series at all. I personally love the aspect of them having to pull out all the strings because they're a show that is on a television schedule, because they're pulling out all the stops. They're making the show interesting, action-wise as well as plot-wise. I can see someone saying Chucky is a little bit corny, but I completely would disagree if someone was like, Chucky is extremely corny when they're talking about the entire television series, because in my opinion, I just don't agree with that.
Yo, bitch, don't got this boo. Yo, bitch not having this shit, okay? She not having it like this. She not doing this shit.
I think it's a perfect mellow drama. I think everything that occurs within this season happens for a reason, like with the killings. And you're never left questioning, why did this happen? Because we see everything interacted, and not only are we seeing it visually, but they're also saying it within the lines as well, and I appreciate that. One thing I do have a problem with this season is that it does feel like it is caving in on itself.
Nasce pra isso, eu já aceitei. Eu tô dentro, eu assino onde for, assino com meu próprio.
In a sense, it also feels like Chucky the television series was kind of made for like a one season series. They kill off a lot of the parents within the first season, like a lot, and very quickly. And because this show is based off children, and plot-wise, these children do have to survive, and the parents themselves, that's how they play an importance. And it's often the question of like, how are these kids gonna survive now that their parents are dead?
Somebody ain't doing the math right.
And it's a very weird place because these people aren't even about to graduate high school. These people have years to go when it comes to not only high school, but providing for themselves, right? They're at least a year off until they're able to be considered, well, two, before they're even able to be considered to apply for jobs and able to keep themselves up. That's kind of weird, but I think it's interesting because, like, I love a risky plot. My thoughts on the characters of this season is that I loved everybody in this show.
That's on period.
Personally, I think Chucky did his thing this season. I think he was absolutely hilarious. And personally, I loved how Chucky is not homophobic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I totally predicted all this, yeah.
How Chucky definitely lives for the girlies. Chucky was giving scenes, he was giving looks, Chucky was giving everything he was supposed to give. I also love the queer aspect of the show in the terms of Tiffany and Nico, definitely in the terms of Deven and Jake. It's definitely the reason that kept me continuously going back to the show and intrigued on what this show had to offer, because we often don't see young queer people in horror, and I think that was just an amazing aspect to the show. I also love Deven. I always love when we can incorporate Black people in horror, and especially queer Black people in horror. I think Deven is a very fleshed out character. Now, there is a little alarming signs of Deven being a Bonnie. Yes, I'm talking about Bonnie from The Vampire Diaries, in the terms that Deven goes through some crazy stuff within this series. And Deven isn't as well fleshed out as I would consider Lexy, as I would consider Jake. And this could be because he's a love interest. And sometimes that kind of overpowers their character development. And I feel like the biggest thing for me is that he is orphaned in this show. And that in his sign is very troubling because Bonnie was orphaned very early and we know what happened to her. And we're kind of seeing that with Deven. Even when he was kidnapped, I was like, you know, if he dies this early in the series and this is like the only Black person within this entire series, I'm probably not gonna finish the series because they are kind of lacking on diversity. The only diversity they have within the show is Deven initially, now that Junior is dead. But outside of that, I'm rooting for Deven. And Deven is the main reason why I watched this show. And I also love the people who are considered Chucky-verse characters like Tiffany and Nico and Andy and Kyle, and hopefully they bring those characters back. Lexy is another person I very much enjoy within the show. I feel like her character did exactly what her character I think would do. I don't think she was misinterpreted or misread. I don't think she did anything particularly wild within the show. I think what's interesting about being introduced to the characters in the first season versus where they actually end up by the end of the season, I never expected that to basically be how their character stories would kind of end. And I think that's amazing because I watch a lot of television shows, and if you ask me, I consider myself a television expert in a term that initially I'm able to tell where a storyline is able to go very quickly. But this one, I was very surprised that Lexy being turned into a hero and not initially being the person who we spend this entire season killing. And same for Junior, right? I'm kind of surprised that Junior never joins the gang and he ends up being an antagonist, and let alone he dies.
But some men don't want to be saved. That nigga ain't want to be saved.
A very interesting aspect for their characters. Basically, yeah. I basically love all the other characters, and I don't have anything to say thus far about any of the characters, including the characters that are in the Chuckyverse. So, in conclusion, I will definitely be reviewing other seasons of Chucky, but I'll just be reviewing the whole season versus like doing significant episodes because I feel like that just works best for me. And yes, we've reached the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.